All right, who's next over here?
Tossing horseshoes is a hobby Dr. Gonzalo Garza picked up shortly after he retired. Dr. Garza is so good at it, he is now a champion in the horseshoe tossing circuit.
Yeah. That's two.
While it is all for fun, the former Marine admits he hates to lose.
Well, that's part of it too, I think. My wife tells me that I'm very competitive, and I just like to compete and just play the game.
It is not unusual to find Virgilio G. Roel working in a study up to 14 hours a day. The retired federal attorney works to ensure that a quality education is made available to any Mexican-American youth who wants it.
Both my father and mother were teachers in Mexico, so this love for education runs throughout our family, and of course the experiences of the war had a lot to do with it.
Anastasio and Rafaela Juarez love all their children, but they admit they have a special place in their hearts for their grandkids.
Pero gracias a Dios que nosotros nos concedió y tuvimos 8 hijos, 5 mujeres y 3 hombres. Y ahora tenemos 16 nietos y 2 bisnietas.
Dr. Gonzalo Garza, Virgilio G. Roel, Anastasio Juarez. These men have never met, but they have much in common. Their lives, along with those of millions of Americans of their generation, changed forever one bright Sunday morning many years ago.
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
These men volunteered to fight and die for a country whose language one of them could barely speak, a country that they felt treated them as second-class citizens. Why did they do it? You will hear from them in the next few minutes, and also meet a journalism professor waging her own campaign to finally tell the story of G.I. Jose, the Mexican-American soldier in World War II.
Welcome to the University of Texas at Austin. I want to welcome you all to the Conference on Latinos in World War II.
In May 2000, inside this meeting room, a unique conference took place.
What she's going to produce, as I said a couple of minutes ago, is a valuable resource for the archives of the University of Texas that will be useful for researchers in years to come, that will eliminate some of the gaps in the historical knowledge about the service of Latinos in World War II.
For the first time, scholars from the United States and Puerto Rico gathered to discuss the impact World War II had on a generation of Latinos. Dr. Maggie Rivas Rodriguez, Director of Latinos and Latinas and World War II Oral History Project, organized the event. The idea to collect oral histories of Latino veterans was actually born years earlier. In 1991, while working as a print journalist, she was asked to write an article about Mexican Americans living in Texas during World War II. During her research and after conducting interviews with the founders of the American GI Forum and the Mexican American Legal Defense Fund, she found that very little had been written about this subject.
What happens in academia is that generally you'll find women studying women's issues, African Americans studying African American issues, Latinos studying Latino issues, and when there's so few Latino scholars and they have to cover so much, and then you get into the thing of you have to cover things that's going to give, be able to be publishable in academic journals and stuff, I understand how this happened. So there was a real shortage of research.
Having grown up in South Texas, she had heard her parents talk about the Second World War and how it had changed their lives. Her father, who only had a fourth-grade education, raised his family working as a barber. It was a trade he learned by going to barber college, paid for by the GI Bill.
Well, what the war meant to my father was that he joined the Army, and he got a chance to learn more English. He got a chance to mix with people he wouldn't have had a chance to mix with. He saw people that had educations, and he had never really, that had not been a part of his background. They're paying his salary, and his job.
When the university asked her to teach a journalism class with a lab publication attached to it, she saw an opportunity. Why not combine both, teaching journalism while also gathering research for the project? The class publication Narratives was born. At first, the students were not sure what she had in mind for the class project. But as they began to compile memorabilia, newspaper clippings, letters, diaries, and other artifacts, they started to see what she was trying to accomplish.
And as they got more into it, then they were coming up and they were saying, "Oh man, we've got these great photographs. I really want to use this picture," and they were coming up and they were like really going way beyond what the class was demanding of them.
And about 10:30.
One of the highlights of the conference was a panel discussion. Here, the audience heard first-person accounts of life as it was lived during the war. Virgilio G. Roel is among the panelists. Growing up in Laredo, Texas, during the Depression was especially hard for Roel and his family. The 12th of 14 children, whose mother died at childbirth, he started working the fields at 8 years old. One of his first childhood memories was that of his family constantly moving to get the cheapest rent available.
Life at that time, like I said, it was a hard life, but we didn't notice it. We didn't complain.
Even at a young age, Roel could not help but notice a difference in jobs held by his people and those held by the Anglos.
They had the best jobs, and there was very few professionals, of Hispanic origin or Mexican-American origin at that time. So, it was hard, and sometimes, I used to think about why, all our people had to work so hard to make a living. Many of them, of course, went out in the farms, and they work in 100-degree weather, picking cotton or picking tomatoes.
Despite the hardships, he was able to attend high school where he excelled in shorthand and typing. In his junior year, he placed an ad in the Laredo newspaper offering his skills for hire. The ad helped him land a job at a customs brokerage house. While still in high school, he was being paid $1 an hour, working up to 60 hours a week. He was now taking home more money every Friday than his father. Roel could have skipped military service. The customs house where he worked imported weapons from Mexico into the United States. But he wanted to do his duty and also see the world. Reality set in when he saw his weekly income shrink to his Army pay of $50 a month. While Roel was experiencing his first taste of military life, Anastasio Juarez had been sent to Missouri for his basic training. There, he and the other recruits hiked up and down hills, carrying a full pack of equipment on their backs. While a few men passed out from the heat, Juarez quickly adapted to the rigors of military training. Marching did not compare to the harsh working conditions he faced as a farmhand near Seguin, Texas, before the war.
Yes, there was a bad days on those days before the war. Real, because we used to work sunset, sun out and sunset all day, especially picking cotton, sweat and this and that, and can't get by on a bale of cotton. We used to get $5 a bale. A bale, the cotton, 5 cents a pound. 500 pounds of bale a cut. You can get 100 bales a cut. You can even pay the meal that you eat on those days.
Keeping step with the others during drills was another matter.
I never did understand much English at the time, and but I was willing to do it. But I just can understand that commands they give me, they give to the soldiers when they drill them. So instead of forward or right flank, right or to the rear march, I keep on walking.
Chico, a nickname given to him by his buddies, did not stop at just memorizing his drill commands. I
have to learn the same thing that I have to learn my serial number. My serial number is 3809 0263. And because if you don't know your serial number in the Army, they won't let you go on pass. So you got to know your serial number. Prior to going into the military, Roel and Juarez had never traveled more than 50 miles from their home. This was also their first experience dealing with Anglos.
There wasn't so much discrimination as far as I was concerned when people looked at me because, I was perhaps not as dark as most Mexican Americans. But once they know your name, you have a Hispanic name, and once you start talking with an accent, then they start discriminating, some openly and some indirectly.
What did he say? What you going to do? They're in Italy. They said, no, I don't worry about it. They said, I got my friend Vela that he gonna do a lot of things for me. He's turning around to you Mexican can say, I won't do nothing for you. So I just pushed my feet down, I hit him with my feet and knocked him down. I defend myself. I fight 3 times.
Gonzalo Garza was in his teens when he first laid eyes on this city by the bay. The year was 1940. His father decided his children should have a chance for a better life and moved them there.
I started school when I was 10 years old, not knowing one word of English, because as I said, that my parents came here from Mexico. The important thing during those years of 1938 was that we were used as crop pickers, and the only thing that mattered in those days was that they asked us, ¿cuántas manos tiene usted? How many hands do you have? Because the number of hands would produce the number of crops that you could pick. So there wasn't much interaction because I started my formal school years in a school called Schumannsville Mexican School, where all the Mexican kids went to school there. And it was a segregated school, a one-room schoolhouse. And so therefore we didn't have much interaction with the Anglo society or Anglo community.
Garza got a job working as a dishwasher in a Corpus Christi hotel. There would be no more working in the fields for him. He had found a trade. As far as going to school, the future educator felt he had learned enough and did not need to spend any more time in a classroom.
I took an aptitude test in my 9th grade year, and I remember that my counselor told me that, showed me the results of the aptitude test and told me that I had very good clerical skills, that I didn't need to go to high school. And so at that time, I didn't even think about high school. I thought about, just finishing the 9th grade. I had already achieved more than any of my 8 brothers and sisters at that time. So I really didn't think much about graduating from high school or going even further.
World War II would soon change his mind.
Straighten up and fly right.
Garza joined the United States Marines in 1944. Boot camp was in San Diego, California. There he was thrown together with young men from all over the country. His main job was to learn how to fight and kill Japanese. The Corps trained them, almost brainwashed them, to make sure they did their jobs.
We had a major that used to tell us in boot camp that he would tell the older, experienced Marines that you Marines that have been out there before, and I'll use some words here that he used to use. He used to tell us, tell them about those little yellow bastards that will shoot at you, that will kill you the first chance they have. He said, you must be prepared to do the same to them.
Thanks to his clerical skills, Roel had been given some choice assignments by the Army. At one point, he was teaching Spanish to intelligence officers at Ohio State University. But like most young men, he really wanted to fight. He pestered his superiors to let him join the paratroopers. The War Department finally gave in. All he had to do was gain some weight.
I didn't meet the minimum weight qualifications, so I was supposed to take the test as a paratrooper a week later, so I had to make about 4 or 5 pounds, and so I had to start a lot of bananas and milk, and I didn't used to like milk, so I used to drink quarts of milk and bananas every day, so I could make the minimum weight to join the paratroopers.
Juarez was already a combat veteran by the time Garza joined the Marines and Roel was finishing his paratrooper training. His first combat experience came in North Africa. He made the landing as part of General George Patton's army. They were the first American troops to face the famed Africa Corps, led by the legendary Desert Fox, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel.
I have to jump. And if you don't jump on the boat, they push you down. You got to jump or somebody gonna push you down. The first landing that we had, or that I had, it was on Oran, Africa. From there, I went clear down they sent me to Casablanca, Rabat, those places, backwards. Instead of go forward, they sent me backwards. But we used to drive a truck from there up to Tunisia.
Although he just drove a truck, Juarez knew that once in the front, you were in a dangerous place.
Yo puedo decir una cosa yo no puedo decir que nunca tuvimos miedo, aunque yo no puedo decir que una persona no llora. Pero allí, primeramente Dios, era todo lo que caminar y no te dejes. Camina y primeramente Dios. Cuídate, camina, haz lo que tú tienes que hacer.
In May 1944, Gonzalo Garza was assigned to the 2nd Marine Division. They stormed the beaches of Saipan the very next month. It was the first time someone had actually shot at him. He was only 17 years old.
It's an experience that very few people will get to know, because it's something very, very different. When you land somebody's shooting at you, and when they shoot at you, the sound of those shots are very different than when you shoot the other way. My job in the platoon was to go out and search all the caves around the beaches, because most of the Japanese soldiers that had remained, had not surrendered or had not been killed, were hiding in the caves of the beaches of Saipan, and that was our job, to go out there and get them out.
He would pray to God to get him out of there alive. War was not as glamorous as he had been led to believe in movies.
You know, if you're going through war, if anybody tells you that they were not afraid, they are big fools or they're lying, or both. Because certainly, I don't know of anybody that has gone through that experience that was not afraid. But I think we learned to cope with very difficult situations. And I, again, said to myself, Yes, I am afraid, but if being afraid is going to stop a bullet, then perhaps I need to just focus on the things that we need to do. And of course, we did a lot of praying.
Roel finally got his wish to get into the fighting. Only thing was, he landed right in the middle of the Battle of the Bulge.
It was very, very, very cold, and a lot of people, you know, either purposely or accidentally, they used to get their feet frozen and they always run from battle. And once we got in there, you did sit, you know, you were commanded to take certain positions and to defend certain positions, and you know, and you were shot at.
Having death hang over you like a blanket brought the men closer together, and they became a family.
Every time you saw somebody being killed or injured, you really felt bad about it, because, you know, and emotions were very strong. But the fact remains that, you know, the commander would say, well, you know, you must keep on going, and, you know, kept on going, and you suffered, you know, individually, entirely. Sometimes you cried, sometimes, you know, as you felt very bad, you felt very nervous that, you know, there, but for the grace of God, you know, when that shot could have hit you, right, you know, just the same way. So you say, you know, how am I going to fare? And, you know, what does this mean to this guy's family? So you try to be very careful.
Juarez never imagined he would encounter his first cousin from California at the battlefront. His cousin's name was Mauricio. He was the son of one of his father's brothers.
I used to see the number of the company, 756 Tank Battalion. And I always drove where they was. But by the time they drive up there, they left. Finally, in Italy, in Caserta, we met up there. And he went and fight in Monte Cassino. And come back, they destroyed 3 times his company in that place. And he come back, and we met again together. It's when we took this picture.
It was a joyful reunion, one that he wrote to his uncle about.
Yes, how come we just got mail from my uncle, and told me the number of the company, and I told him they was follow him, and then when I met him, I wrote him and told him that we met. And he got killed in Rhine River. And just crossing the Rhine River in Germany. A bomb hit the tank, and he lost his life. Then when he got killed, I don't call anymore. I don't write no letters anymore.
The island fighting in the Pacific offered Garza a glimpse of how education could help him after the war.
I had an opportunity to go to a Japanese language school. I had picked up a little Japanese language book that had little phrases. And at the time that we were there in Saipan, we needed Japanese interpreters that would find out specific things from the Japanese soldiers that we would capture. Because at the time we would capture a Japanese soldier, we had to take them back to division, which took a long time. By the time they were interrogated, it was too late.
April 1945, Germany had surrendered. Europe was finally free. But amid the celebrations, there was still a job to be done. Japan had yet to surrender. The three men knew they were to take part in the invasion of that island nation. Casualty estimates ran as high as 500,000 men.
And knowing what I know now, at that time about Nagasaki, and we were going to land in Nagasaki if the war had not ended, if it had not been for the atomic bomb, I can unequivocally say that if it hadn't been for that atomic bomb, if they had not dropped that atomic bomb in Nagasaki, I would not be here today.
Roel was in France when he first heard of the atomic bomb being dropped on Hiroshima. But instead of celebrating the end of the war, he was saddened by another piece of news from home. President Franklin Roosevelt was dead.
He had a lot of soldiers crying, because he was the first president that they had voted for, they had known actually, and he was almost like they had lost. We have lost our father.
The war had now taken Juarez to North Africa, Italy, France, and Germany. He had been shot at, but never been wounded. He had fired his weapon, but could not really say whether he had killed anyone. He wrote his fiancée not to worry about him, because he believed it was destiny that kills you, not a bullet.
Yo soy la señora Rafaela Juárez y fui novia de Anastasio Juárez cuando él estuvo en la Segunda Guerra Mundial.
Al cerrar los ojos veo.
Un día que fui al cine, Pedro Infante nos cantó una canción y nos dijo que la dedicaba a todas las novias olvidadas que tenían sus novios allá en la guerra. Y pues eso me hizo pensar de que pues era muy duro para nosotras las novias que estábamos esperando a nuestros novios, pero hubo muchas novias que no los esperaron y también novios que allá se casaron y vinieron ya casados.
For the first time in his life, Juarez thought about his future. If he made it out of this war alive, he thought, he would never go back to work as a field hand. And, most important, he was going to learn the language of the country he fought for and loved.
They come up in my mind, and I say, it happened that I'll go back to the United States, and happen that I'll get married. That's the first thing I'm going to do. If I'm going to have family, I'm going to try to, because I suffer. I just was a soldier. I just couldn't speak at all. I was here. I understand what they say, but I wasn't able to have a conservation, a talk with them good. You see. So it's what I say, and I'm thinking about it. And thanks to God, we did it.
What they were talking about, I thought they were saying something else.
Garza also thought about what life would be like after the war.
That I promised myself that if I ever come back, because again, I wasn't too sure. We were at war, whether I would come back or not. But I promised myself, I said, if I ever get back, I promised myself that I would graduate from high school, number one goal, and then think about furthering my education and going on to college.
All three men would take advantage of a portion of the newly enacted Veterans Readjustment Act called the GI Bill.
The GI Bill has been, I would say, a savior for not only the Hispanic military persons, but anybody that was served in the military had that right to claim GI Bill. And so that was a big help. If it hadn't been for the GI Bill, I don't know, I probably rounds and scraped and everything, but it helped me a great deal.
The GI Bill was the one that allowed many Mexican Americans and other minorities to go to college, and become lawyers and doctors and engineers and nurses and other professions.
Garza decided to make education his life vocation. After earning several degrees and a doctorate, his career took him all the way from a 6th grade teacher, an elementary school principal, to an associate superintendent of schools. That was the last position he held when he retired in 1992. Along the way, he also served in the Marine Corps again during the Korean conflict and raised a family. Roel decided to finish college in 3 years so that he could apply the GI Bill to law school. He too went on to a distinguished career, practicing law in both the private sector and for the federal government. In the early 1960s, President John F. Kennedy appointed him to serve as a social justice of the High Court of American Samoa. He married the former Emilia Salinas. Their children heard the importance of education all of their lives. 2 of their daughters entered the medical profession, while the other 2 children became certified public accountants. Juarez also took advantage of the GI Bill to learn a trade. He spent 30 years working as a sheet metal worker at Kelly Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. Today, he wonders what would have become of him had the war not interrupted his life.
In some way, the benefits, if it was for that war, War II, to break out, really, the Spanish-speaking people, I don't know what we was going to do.
Recording and videotaping the experiences of Latinos and Latinas who lived through this period in our history is a daunting task. The Latinos and Latinas in World War II Oral History Project is striving to do just that. But volunteers to conduct interviews and research family histories are needed. Volunteers can come in all ages and are not limited to journalism students.
Our volunteer interviewers are basically older people. I would say that we don't have anybody, even in their 20s. Probably our volunteers that we've gotten so far have been 30s and much older.
Clarence E. Eason, Audrey Lee Jefferson.
Time is also a factor. World War II era veterans are dying at a rate of 1,000 a day.
When you look at the historical accounts of World War II, you're hard-pressed to find any Spanish surnames. And even when you look at current works about World War II, you still don't see a lot of Hispanic surnames. You don't see our stories.
We took a great deal of pride. I don't know if you might call it the machismo or whatever you want to call it, but I think that that influence we had from our culture, our parents, and to be proud of who you are, to be proud of what you do, and to do the best job you know how under adverse conditions. And I think that was proven very, very distinctly by those of us, Mexican Americans, called at that time.
Mexican American GIs who served and survived came back with renewed self-confidence. They demanded equal treatment and fairness in the political process. To lend a voice to their issues, they formed groups like the American GI Forum and the League of United Latin American Citizens, or LULAC. The GI Bill enabled men like Anastasio Juarez to learn a trade to support their growing families. Veterans like Dr. Gonzalo Garza and Virgilio G. Roel took full advantage of GI benefits to become lawyers and educators. These men made it clear that the Mexican customs, language, and traditions passed on to them by their parents would always be a part of who they were. But to the man, they will tell you that they fought for their country not as a member of an ethnic group, they fought as Americans.